And we're live. Hey, everybody. This is Brita from the Firehose project. This is Ken, our CTO and co-founder. We're really excited to have you all here today joining us for the info session. Our theme of the day is expectations of junior developers. I know this is something that both students in our full program as well as in our bootcamp prep course are really curious about. So we're excited to chat with you about it today and get some kind of firsthand thoughts on that from Ken. So before we start, just a little overview, kind of what we're going to cover today. So obviously the topic of the day, expectations of junior developers, what the first role kind of looks like, how to position yourself as you're going into those first roles, all of that good stuff. And then we're going to go and kind of talk about, for students that are kind of interested in coding and joining us today, why it's an interesting topic to study and a career to get into, how, what's going on in that kind of industry right now, and then why you might want to learn an online coding bootcamp and what happens in online coding bootcamps. And then we'll dive into some of the specifics of our program. So we're going to look at the curriculum and the teaching method, as well as kind of our students and our community and the Agile team project that we have in our course, which is a huge part of our program. And of course, how you can get involved in all that. So I guess we'll jump right into the topic of the day that I know everybody's interested in hearing about. So Ken, let's talk a little bit about expectations of junior developers and what it's like starting off your career, no matter kind of what background you're coming from, your learning of programming. So I guess to start, let's just talk about hiring junior developers and kind of what do kind of common misconceptions, or how should people that are just learning how to code and just starting their careers go into that and learn how to position themselves as a junior developer for employers or potential employers?
Yeah, absolutely. It's a super good question. I think a lot of people sort of don't really understand exactly what being a junior developer entails, what the difference between a junior developer and a regular developer, like a full developer that doesn't have the junior in their title, and what the expectations are. So one of the things that I would start out with is the company that hires a junior developer is really thinking about more of the long-term impact of this employee, as opposed to thinking about the impact that they might necessarily have on the actual day that they start. So they're going to be investing a lot of energy and time to train you up and sort of make you a better developer and get you to be one of the best developers on their team. So basically, if developers stick around at a company for a long period of time, which happens at a lot of the best companies out there, it makes sense to sort of start out with somebody a little bit with a little bit less experience, give them some experience, and then have them grow into a more senior role. So you're not necessarily expected to be able to very complex applications sort of all by yourself without asking for help. Instead, you'll be working on smaller things and growing and becoming a better developer each and every day. So instead of thinking about the short term and what features you can build and all that stuff matters. But what's even more important is how are you growing, learning, and becoming a better developer and the best developer version of yourself. So focus on the long term and improving yourself, and you'll end up in the best position possible.
Cool. And so do you think when you're going into these roles and kind of, going through technical interviews and talking with recruiters and stuff, is it best to be kind of honest about exactly where you're at, or kind of try to, I mean, this is definitely a leading question, but kind of so I think sometimes people think that they need to overstate maybe the projects that they worked on and stuff like that. So what do you think is best, the best approach to take when you're kind of talking to recruiters and hiring managers and stuff like that for technical roles?
Yeah, I think it's a little bit scary to know exactly how you should position yourself when you're out interviewing. You definitely want to position yourself as somebody who is capable of learning, capable of growing, and really cares about that type of thing. But you don't necessarily need to position yourself as an expert at everything and just say that you know everything, even if you don't know things. So try to be honest about the strengths that you have, your weaknesses, the areas that you're looking to improve, and just be honest and open with people about that stuff. Having said that, it's usually pretty helpful to Also give people the impression that you would have the ability to learn any of the weaknesses that you have. You have the ability to actually go and make it actually one of your strengths. So focus on doing that type of a thing, being honest, but also being able to communicate. I might not know this, but I know this other thing, and I can learn this other thing because I am a good developer. So focus on your ability to learn and pick up new skills.
Something that we definitely, I think in one of our last info sessions, we talked about that a bit, is like taking, identifying your weaknesses and turning them into strengths, and just like starting to practice that and hone in on that even as you're just learning, because that's something that'll definitely be kind of appreciated, if not expected, in your first role.
Yeah, absolutely.
Awesome. So that kind of talked about like positioning and talking to recruiters and stuff like that. So maybe now we can dive into what happens when you get the job and you're in your first role as a junior developer, and kind of that onboarding process. So what does some of the first, what does getting up and getting started kind of look like for that in your first role?
Yeah, so it's one of the more complicated challenges that you probably wouldn't anticipate off the bat. And that's just getting your computer set up to have all the applications that the company is working with up and running, having the test suite pass. So basically, if the company uses like a test-driven development approach that a lot of companies do, you want to be able to make sure that you're capable of running the tests and making sure that the product is working the way that it should be and everything is configured properly. So basically the first step is just installing all the programs, and it sounds like it's a pretty easy task if you're used to just installing other programs on your computer, but a lot of times these projects have a lot of different pieces and it needs to be configured kind of in a very specific way. So a lot of times there's like some documentation to help people get started, but sometimes it goes out of date a little bit and the instructions are a little bit off. So it's not uncommon to have to work with some of the other developers on the team and ask them, hey, I can't get this to work. Can you help me install things on my computer? And hopefully you can get your computer and your environment set up in your first day or two of your position. But that's almost always going to be one of the first thing, except maybe doing some paperwork or admin things.
Okay, cool. So definitely a bit of an onboarding process there. And then so one of the things in our program that we do and focus a lot on is the Agile Team Project and working with a dev team and kind of really giving you that real world experience in our program. So what does it look like when you're starting off in your junior developer role? Like, who are the other people that you're working with in your team, and kind of what are, how are you meeting with them and stuff like that when you're getting started?
Yeah, so at most companies that you look at, they're going to have these meetings that they call stand-ups, which happen usually every day. And every day, the dev team will come together and they will just talk about what they spent the previous day doing, what they plan to spend the upcoming day to do, and also talk about any challenges or blocks that they have, and just get everybody on the same page of sort of what's going on. So as a junior developer, you're encouraged to go to those meetings and talk to people. And I remember the first couple of stand-up meetings I had, I was super nervous about presenting myself in front of the team and talking about the stuff that I was doing and feeling like I was moving too slow and stuff like that. But you get used to it over time, and eventually stand-up is something that isn't stressful at all. Like the first couple of times you go, you might be a little nervous because you have to present yourself in front of the team, but before you know it, you'll end up being fast friends with a lot of the other developers on your team, and just that quick status update that you have is going to be something that's really easy. Another thing that I might point out is on our Agile team projects that we have at the Firehose project, we replicate the idea of a stand-up, and we have the entire team get together once a week and talk about these types of things too. What did you do the previous week? What did you do the upcoming week? What are you going to do the upcoming week? And do you need any help? Are you blocked? And sort of get everybody on the same page. So that's really one of the things that's really important in a junior developer role, is just making sure the rest of the team is on the same page as you.
Cool. So how about the first projects that you'll be working on, or the first kind of contributions that you're having to your team, your project, your company?
Yeah, absolutely. I think the level of difficulty of a lot of the challenges that you'll pick up will ramp up, and hopefully ramp up at a pace that you feel comfortable with. So most of the times people will start off by doing just pretty simple tickets. So think about typos on marketing pages, or just things that don't involve complex logic and really complicated things, but instead we'll get you accustomed to the processes of the company that you're working at. So things like, is there a ticketing system that's involved that sort of keeps track of all the bugs and features and all that stuff? Well, you want to be able to at least get started using it and understand, well, how do I find all the issues to work on? Where is the work sort of assigned? And you start working with the ticketing systems to read it, understand it, and then mapping it to the source code and being like, okay, where's this talking about, where's the file that I need to change, and be able to sort of like make that sort of connection. And once you do that, the next step is just making it so it's accepted into the code. So one of the big first accomplishments of any junior developer is the first time that they make a pull request. So that's like a change request that they make to the code base. And it's really exciting when you make your first code change request and the employer or like your boss or your coworkers reviews it and they're like, this is good, this is going to make the product better, and they press the button to accept it and you're like, I finally written code in production, like this is actually going to go live. So it's a big moment the first time that you get your first lines of code shipped. So it's something that you shouldn't you should like appreciate and sort of congratulate yourself when you get there.
Cool. So how about once you do get there and then you're kind of working on like larger projects? How does that work? Is it just kind of like, here you go, have fun with it? Like, how are you working with other people? Are you working under your dev lead? Like, can you kind of talk a little bit about that process once you're really starting to ramp up a bit more?
Yeah, absolutely. So a lot of times, especially when you're a junior dev and you're starting to get bigger and bigger tasks, so that's kind of what ends up happening. You start off with these small things like typos and things like that, and your team's going to encourage you to sort of ramp up in difficulty and get bigger and bigger and bigger things. And eventually it's going to make sense. It's going to take you more than like a day to do a single feature or something like that. It can oftentimes take like 2, 3, 4 days to do that. And for some of these bigger tickets that are going to take you the better part of the week, it's easy to start going down one direction and actually having it be not necessarily the right direction to go on. So a lot of times when you're a junior developer and you're taking on like a pretty big chunk of a feature or a complex bug, a lot of times the more senior developers will check in and see how you're doing, make sure you're on the right track, ask to see the code that you're writing. And again, it can be a little bit intimidating to show people your code when you don't think it's ready and you're like, hey, I want to have some more time to do it. But it makes sense to have the check-ins and to do that stuff, because if you don't have that, it's easy to go off and spend a lot of time doing stuff that actually isn't helpful. So a lot of the times on the more complicated things, the senior devs will check in, and it's not uncommon to do what's known as pair programming too. So maybe a couple hours a day getting paired up with a more senior person with a lot more experience, and you sitting it behind the keyboard and having the other senior person sit behind you and sort of say, well, how do you think we should proceed, and like, what are we going to do? And they kind of watch you as you code and kind of push you in the right direction. So it's kind of like a team effort of building the same thing, because you only have one keyboard, but you have like 2 people that sort of are going to be working to make the feature become a reality. So that's very common, especially at good companies. And pair programming is one of the ways that you can learn the most efficiently and really level up your skills. So it's not surprising that companies encourage you to pair program when you're just starting out.
Yeah, cool. And so I think like a couple of things about that. So one, that definitely reflects kind of what we were talking about just a few minutes ago with like positioning yourself of not necessarily knowing everything, but being able and willing to learn. And I think pair programming is a way that you definitely continue to do that in the role. And it shows why like companies really value that and how you do that. And that shows why they like appreciate that mentality coming in of being able and willing to learn as well. And then that's also something that, you know, with our mentors in Firehose project, you'll get that experience of pair programming and working with a senior developer and having them, you know, keep you on track and guiding you through and like working together on that as well. Awesome. So how about like after the first few weeks, you've like maybe worked on a larger project, like then like where do you go from there? How does that kind of unfold?
Yeah, so once you kind of get the first bits of work done and you start getting in the flow of things and you understand what it's like to work at the company, there's oftentimes a lot of sort of processes in place to sort of make sure the development work keeps going and the developers know what to work on and everybody's on the same page. So one of the first meetings that you might end up going to, which commonly isn't like the first day that you work, sometimes it might be, but it's not uncommon to be a week or two in before this happens. But there's these meetings that they call sprint planning meetings. And what sprint planning meetings are is, well, what a sprint is it's a collection of work. So if you think about sort of how long it will take to implement a feature or something like this, development teams oftentimes say like, hey, let's bundle all this stuff up in one block and do it all at the same time. So by doing that, you're able to predict when certain features will be live and like when things happen. So it's not uncommon to have these sprints, these blocks of time that you're going to be building stuff, and determining what work gets involved in the next sprint is something that both the developers and the product managers have a pretty serious like vested interest in. So everybody gets in a room and they talk about what are the next steps, and a lot of times they'll go through like a ticketing system, something like that has all of the issues, and just go one by one and take the first one and be like, okay, are we going to do this next sprint? Why or why not? How long is this going to take? If we pull this in, do we have to take something else out? And just talk in a ton of depth about sort of like, what's it going to take to do this ticket? And is it important to do it next, or can it be pushed off until a later sprint?
Cool. And so kind of looking like really long-term now, what is the best, so we're talking obviously about like just starting off your career as a junior developer and what that looks like. So how about like kind of progressing past that junior developer role and really looking at kind of longer term career development? Like what, I guess, is your insight or advice or perspective on that and the best way to do that once you've kind of gotten through those steps that we just spoke about?
Yeah, I think becoming a junior developer is a big step. And when you get your first job, it's something that on the one hand is a huge accomplishment and it's awesome, but it also is the first step on a even larger journey, right? So you probably don't want to be a junior developer for the rest of your life. You probably want to continue and become a better and better developer, and maybe eventually even become like a senior developer, one of the people that's like leading the teams and sort of pushing the direction of the company, somebody that's going to be pair programming with the new junior developers that are in there. So you really want to just think about sort of like the career trajectory that you have and make it so you're getting out of that junior role as quick as possible and going to the next steps. And those next steps will help make it so you're able to help the rest of the team and push the team at a much faster pace. So instead of always being the person who's asking for help, it's about becoming somebody that is going to be offering a lot of help. And it's thinking about how you can make contributions to the code base and have ideas about how you can write cleaner code and encourage people to refactor their code, do a lot of code reviews and do stuff like that. So as a junior developer, some of those things aren't necessarily expected of you when you start out, but you definitely want to get there eventually. So your number one goal should be just to get that junior out of your title.
Cool. And so one thing, again, that we do and that we actually recently launched are advanced programming courses. And it's kind of aimed at that, at like getting the junior out of your title and continuing to learn once you've graduated our full program or once you're in, your first job as a developer, because I think that's definitely one of the kind of most important things, whether or not, you're looking to, how quickly you're looking to become a senior developer or move on, but just the ability to keep learning and keep working with new technologies and practicing and challenging yourself. And I think staying in that like problem solving, challenging mindset as well. So we'll talk a little bit about that later, but thank you so much for joining us, Ken. That was awesome. I hope that was helpful for everybody. If you have questions, I forgot to mention, but you can post them in the chat in the side, and I think Marco is actually answering some of those. And you're always also welcome to email us at questions@thefirehoseproject.com, and we'll get back to you, answer any questions and chat a little bit further if you'd like. So feel free to send us any questions and we'd be happy to chat, whether it's about being a junior developer or about our program or your coding goals. We'd love to hear from you. So thank you so much, Ken. That was great. We'll see you.
See you guys.
Okay, so now we'll jump into some more of the program and kind of talking about coding in general and why that might be something that's interesting, and that you may be interested in getting into if you're joining us for the info session. So let's start, I guess, with like why coding is important and relevant. So there's a saying that software is eating the world, and I think a lot of people are really intrigued by this, and if it's still the case. And I think definitely it's actually more true now than ever. So if you look at all of the technologies and advancements that have come out of the past 5 or 10 years, and then kind of where we are now and where we're going in the next 5 or 10 years, software and programming is at the core of a lot of that. So looking at things like Tesla and all of the projects that they're working on with autonomous cars and various projects, they've got so much going on. And then with SpaceX, sending people into space and all of that, as well as things and companies that are maybe more traditional and aren't necessarily thought of as like cutting edge technologies. More traditional companies that are looking to automate things and improve efficiencies. They're all looking for programmers as well, and web development. So it's really relevant career across a variety of kind of industries, both ones that seem more like they would be apt for having programmers and a rich development, and also those that are kind of trying to catch up and be a little bit more efficient and cutting edge as well. So there's a lot that's possible with code and a lot of different ways to apply a programming expertise across a number of industries. And then on a personal level, if this is something that you're thinking about, or maybe you already have some experience with, or you're looking to get back into, looking at a fulfilling career and in-demand skills that are going to be evolving over time, and not having you doing the same thing every day, always new challenges and learning more, which Ken and I were just talking about. So looking at a career in coding and in programming, you're really looking at something that involves a lot of like problem solving and puzzles and critical thinking, and addressing challenges and problems and opportunities with code. And so that's what it's really like, and that's why people find this career so fulfilling, because you are working on projects where you're creating things, and you're creating solutions to problems and opportunities, and that's always varying. So it's definitely, you're always on your toes, learning new things, working with new projects and ideas, and really digging into that kind of problem solving mindset. So if that's something that sounds interesting to you, and something that maybe you've had some experience with, I know most of you viewing today have already signed up for our bootcamp prep course and started writing some Ruby programs. If you haven't, you can sign up at the firehoseproject.com and start testing out the waters, getting some code review. But most of you have already done that, and are maybe interested in learning more and in making a career switch, or starting to code on your own, or starting your own projects. So looking at different ways that you can learn and really get to that level where you're able to do that. There's a bunch of different ways. So obviously, there's the more traditional computer science degree, which is a lot longer and frankly more expensive. And then we've got coding boot camps. And so the Firehose project is an online coding boot camp. And so we can talk a little bit about why you might want to learn to code online, and what the benefits of that are. And so before we kind of get into that, we can back up a little bit and look at how the Firehose project started. So we actually started as an in-person coding bootcamp. So our co-founders, Ken, who's just here, and then Marco, who some of you might be chatting with in the chat, they both have a history and a past in education and in technical roles. So they started teaching actually in-person coding boot camps, and we were teaching intensive courses at places like Harvard and Babson, Brown, RISD, Carnegie Mellon, a bunch of other places. And what that did is it gave us a really good feedback loop on how students learn how to code best, and how we can explain concepts and really make things click for our students. So when to provide the right content at the right time, and when to kind of make sure students are on track, and when to challenge them more. So we got all of this really great insight from teaching in person, and then in scaling up our program and really looking at how to optimize that teaching and learning experience, translated that into an online course. So we are able to take kind of all of our learnings from in-person teaching and make a really rich curriculum that is designed to be more interactive and engaging and more individualized as well, and really providing the right content at the right time based on your individual progress, as well as your learning pace and speed. So, you know, if you think of kind of more of a traditional lecture, you've got usually one, maybe one instructor and a TA in the room and a class full of students. And you're kind of bound to the pace of the class. So if you're doing really well and you're, you know, excelling, you're not going to be able to really continue to challenge yourself and move forward as fast as you might like or want or be able to. And on the flip side, if you're kind of, you know, confused or need a little extra help, it's a little bit harder to get it in that type of setting. So with an online program, you can really move more at your own pace. And so we'll never hold you back if you're progressing faster. In fact, we'll keep you challenged. We've got over 900 hours of curriculum on our platform, and that's always growing, and we're always updating it to make sure it's the most up-to-date technologies and content and curriculum. So you can always kind of move faster, and then we can also see if you're falling behind or if you're confused on things, and we can work with you on that as well. So we can suggest, you know, additional resources, and you can work with your mentor on going over concepts, stuff like that. So you get a much more kind of individualized and personal experience as you're going through the lessons. And we do that a lot by really providing the right content at the right time. So seeing when you're going through lessons and having you solve a challenge and making sure you're watching the, you know, videos at the right time that are going to kind of explain things and tie it all together. So it's very much customized to your kind of pace and progress through the course. And then, of course, being an online coding bootcamp where you can move through it at your own time and code on your own time, it accommodates a much wider range of schedules and time zones. So we have students all over the US as well as internationally as well. So that's a huge benefit, not only to, you know, people looking to learn how to code and not being tied down to a certain schedule or needing to commute to a classroom, but it's also a huge benefit to us because we have a really diverse community of students that all bring amazing insight and backgrounds and really diverse, you know, opinions and experiences into the program. And it builds up a really, really great Firehose community. That's one of the best parts of our program. So we definitely have students, you know, that are stay-at-home parents. We have students that have worked, you know, as like front desk coordinators or office managers. We have project managers. We have several students that also, you know, have worked in IT or have a programming background. And so we have a bunch of students from Google and Adobe where those companies have put them through our course either to level up or learn new languages or practice their skills. So when you start the program, you'll be coding kind of with all of these students. You'll be interacting in office hours and on the team project. And we'll show you shortly when we give you a preview of what the platform looks like. You'll be able to find students in Slack that are working on the same projects and lessons as you. So it really builds up this really amazing community that you then have lifetime access to. So, you know, you have this network of peers and fellow students and then eventually alumni that you can chat with and you know, really connect with and network as you're starting your career. So those are kind of our students and the whole kind of community there that you'll be working with. But you'll also get a ton of support and opportunity to learn from the mentors as well as the Firehose team as well. So looking at the Firehose project and coding online, one of the things that's really important is that you get the help and the support when you need it. And so in order to do that in an online program, we've developed a coordinated, really broad method of support. So it starts off with, we have a forum at the bottom of each lesson, which if you've signed up for the bootcamp prep course, you'll see that at the bottom of each lesson. Maybe you've asked a question. And so the forum is basically there to have all your tech questions, your technical questions, whether it's, you know, trying to figure out why your code's not working and it's because you've got an extra comma in there, or, you know, you have a question about a certain method that you're trying to use or something like that. So that you're never stuck spinning your wheels. So anytime that you're on the platform coding, you need a little help, you can comment in the forum. And it's a great way to do that because you can either copy and paste your code or take a screenshot. And members of our Firehose team Firehose ambassadors, Firehose engineers will be able to get back to you with kind of expert technical help there and make sure that you aren't stuck because of a silly typo or something like that, as well as explain some larger concepts as well. So we have quick response times, make sure you're never spinning your wheels for too long, and that's the forum. And so that's a great way to just get kind of like day-to-day help as you're working through the lessons. As you are working through those lessons and submitting your code, you're also going to be getting code reviews from the Firehose project engineers and team. So this is something that, again, you'll also be able to experience in the free bootcamp prep course. As you're working through some of the Ruby challenges, you'll submit them and we'll take a look. And we'll give you any feedback on how your code could be improved. So whether it's making it a bit more efficient, refactoring your code, and then we'll give you the thumbs up once it's looking good. And so code reviews is something that Ken was also talking about, and being a junior developer is a huge part of the process. So coding and having your peers or your team lead look at it and make sure you're on track and make sure that your code is looking good and clean and efficient. And that's something that is a big part of our program, and that really helps you learn from the process that you're going through and constantly improve. And then, of course, we have mentors that you'll get paired one-on-one with an expert mentor. And so our mentors are senior developers. They're all either working at various companies and have several years of development experience. Some of them are like full-time freelancers or have started their own projects or companies. And so you'll get matched in the first week of the program with a mentor that you'll then meet with regularly throughout the rest of the program. And we match you based on some of your background and goals as well as your mentor's experience to make sure that they kind of bring the most to the table given where you're coming from with your coding experience and where you'd like to be going with that. And then you'll meet with them regularly, and like Ken was saying, you'll get a chance to pair program, which is a huge benefit to when you're learning how to code, to work with a senior developer and get their insight and their feedback and their support while you're coding. And it also prepares you for that role as a junior developer, because that's something that you most likely will be doing with some of your team there. So getting comfortable with that and learning kind of how that works, and then benefiting from that as well. And so your mentors can also, you can chat about things that you've been working on the previous week. You can kind of treat it almost like a stand-up, talk about the things that you've been working on, what maybe has been blocking you, what's been confusing for you, and really use that time to tap into all of the knowledge and expertise of your mentor. So that's a huge part that really helps our students level up week to week, and make sure that you're constantly improving and constantly challenged as well. And then beyond that, we also have weekly office hours that are hosted by Ken and Marco. And it's basically a virtual kind of hangout. Students will call in, ask their questions. So you can ask any questions you have and hear other students' questions, as well as put faces to names, because you'll be seeing students in the program commenting in the forum and in Slack. And so it's a great time to kind of meet and network with the community as well, and chat with our co-founders, Ken and Marco, and talk about your experience, ask your questions, and really just kind of anything that's been on your mind that week. It's another outlet to really talk about that as well. And then lastly, we have a bunch of kind of methods that you can engage with the community and chat with other students and with alumni and the Firehose team. So we have a Slack channel, we have a community page, we have a Google Plus group, as well as some open source projects that our students and alumni are always working on. And then the team project as well is going to be kind of in the last 8 weeks of the program. We'll talk a little bit more about that. And that's going to be another way that you're kind of working really closely with a Firehose mentor, as well as another group of students that you're kind of tackling this project. And so we'll get into more on that later. So that is kind of our community and our support, and talking a bit about coding online. So let's dive in now and kind of look at our program and curriculum and what you'll actually be learning and doing if you're joining us for the full program in the Firehose project. So we start off, like I said, most of you, I believe, are signed up for the free bootcamp prep course. If you haven't yet, you should definitely check it out. You'll basically learn how to, you have the option of creating a custom portfolio page, so working with HTML and CSS, and creating a custom splash page for your portfolio where you can then showcase all of the apps that you've worked on in the program. And then you'll also start diving right into writing some Ruby programs. And so we'll give you code review on that. You can ask any questions in the forum, and you can get a sense of, working in your terminal and how to run commands and run your programs, and really diving right into that. And so programs, like I mentioned, you're going to get code reviews, and once you get the thumbs up on all of the 3 challenges in the bootcamp prep course, we can officially accept you into the full program. And so we start students every Monday, so it's rolling admissions. And then once you're in the full program, things ramp up pretty quickly, and you start really diving into what it's like to be a developer and learning the skills that you need to get there. So a lot of our program is based on both computer science fundamentals as well as real hands-on, real-world coding experience. So we do dive really deep into the computer science fundamentals. So like working with object-oriented programming and algorithms, writing really good tests into your code. And then we focus a lot on, having that real-world experience so that you know how to take something from a conceptual phase and plan it out and break it up into tasks and develop it, obviously, and then host it online. And so you'll work through that whole process several times. You'll build out actually 5 apps throughout the program. And so we get you that experience, and we start off by kind of walking you through that a bit and showing you how it's all done. And so you're starting to get a sense and learn about how it's done, and then we continue teaching through some repetition. And as we're doing that, we're slowly taking off the training wheels. And so each time that you're working through these processes and building out new apps with new, slightly more complex features, you're also doing much more of that process and the developing on your own until you kind of hit this inflection point where you're learning how to do all of those things on your own, and you become a really unstoppable developer because you start to learn how to learn and how to solve these problems that you may not have even foreseen coming. So we focus a lot of our teaching philosophy on getting you to that point and supporting you to that point, and then letting you kind of take off from there. So going into some of the programs and apps that you'll build out in the program. So you're going to start off, and you're going to be working on things like with data structures and algorithms. So in the first week of the program, you're going to build an online quotes generator that has, takes user input and stores it in a database and generates the data back out to the interface. And so you're building out features like that, and you're starting to work with data structures. And then every app that you build is going to ramp up a bit. So the next one, you're going to be working with APIs and with user authentication and location-based and commenting and stuff like that. So you can see all of the projects, a little preview of all of the projects that you'll be working on in the bootcamp prep course. So if you haven't already, definitely sign up, and you can read about all of those in the bootcamp prep course, like the features that you'll learn how to build, what you'll actually be creating. So I won't go through all that now because you can read it online in our program for free. But I would love to show you a preview, a sneak peek, if you will, of the full platform and what those lessons look like and what it's like to actually be a student in our program and how you'll work through those lessons and learn with us. So we'll switch, and I'll show you some of that in just one second. And we can kind of take a look at the lessons and how it's all set up and what our program actually looks like. Go into that now. And so let's see, we'll make this a bit bigger so we can see in here. So this is the dashboard of what the lessons are going to look like in the full program. So you'll see here, this is the bootcamp prep course. This is just a kind of test account that I have. So you can see I don't have any progress here yet. But this is basically how we kind of help you stay on track. So our bootcamp prep course, our full program is online and self-paced. But what that means is that you can put in the hours each week when it makes sense for your schedule, but we're still going to give you a progress bar and weekly goals and all the tools that you need to stay on track and hold yourself accountable. So you'll actually be able to come in here and check off your goals and your your tasks as you're doing them, and also see kind of what's upcoming, so you can know how to kind of manage your time and make sure that you're holding yourself accountable and staying on track. And then you'll see, you know, all of these apps that you're going to be working on in the full program, and so you'll be able to work through these, we call them lesson tracks, and so you'll work through all of these tracks and build those out. You can, as I was saying, you can also see these in the bootcamp prep course and get more of a preview and kind of read through some of those as well. So going into what some of the lessons look like. So this is one of the apps that you'll be building. It's a Nomster app. And so this is basically a Yelp clone. And so you're going to be doing things like adding a Google map, working with APIs. So it's a location-based app that allows you to take different, to collect different pieces of information about a location. So we've had students build out ones that collect the best bakeries or the best ice cream shops. And we've also had students do things like the best rock climbing areas. And so there's a lot of creativity that you can add into these as we're teaching you how to build out all these features. So let's take a look at this one. So this is what a kind of typical lesson looks like. And as you're going to see, we're starting you off and we're kind of showing you how to go through and build out these features. And so we're going to be showing you, you know, what your code should be looking like, and you're going to be coding alongside, and then we're going to be asking you to add more things and, you know, continue coding to add these features into your apps. But we're starting off as by kind of showing you how to do things, because obviously everybody's learning as they're starting off. And so we've got things like common gotchas, things that trip people up. And so you'll be working through those lessons, but then you'll also see as you're going through all of these lessons that we'll throw in some challenges in here. And so the challenges are designed to really kind of take you to the next level of your ability in coding. And so if you think about it, where the lesson that we just showed you is kind of showing you, you know, teaching you how to do all these features and how to work through the apps and build out things. The challenge then gives you that kind of real world experience, and it's almost like simulating, you know, what it would be like in a client meeting or working with a team within a company where you've got the training wheels off, and what you're getting here is working through some more of the kind of rough steps and getting details, rougher details on what you need to be doing. And so it'll be asking you to solve for certain problems or opportunities, and then you're going to be the one that has to kind of figure out how you get there. So as we're teaching you and going through these lessons, we're teaching you how to do things, we're then going to throw in a challenge and say, okay, you've got all the tools. We know that we've given you the tools. And now why don't you go ahead and see what you can do on your own with all those tools. And all of this is fair game to use. And we're going to give you hints. I won't show you for too long, but we're going to give you hints that will help you out along the way if you need them. So this is a really big part of making sure that you're pushing yourself and that you're getting that real world experience. And we believe in you and are here to help. And the forum down here, like I was mentioning, is always available as well if you have questions. So you can see a bunch of people asking questions here. This is where you can post your question with your code and make sure that you get a quick response so that you're not stuck. So we'll have all your, and then we'll also have challenges down here. And so these are challenges that are kind of taking your experience with like the higher level concepts to the next level. So you'll work through these challenges, and again, this is something that's really taking everything that you've learned and asking you to kind of apply those concepts as we take off the training wheels. So as you noticed, our curriculum is mostly text-based. The reason for that is when you're working in a developer role, you're going to be getting text-based documentation and instructions on how to work with new APIs and how to work on new projects. So it's a good way to start really getting comfortable with that format and knowing how to learn with that as well. And then in addition, you do have lifetime access to the current curriculum. So this is going to act as a huge resource as you are going out into your new job and, you know, looking to maybe revisit concepts that you learned in the program and stuff like that. But that being said, we do have a bunch of videos that we do kind of have you look through at various points when it makes sense to kind of tie something together on a larger way. So for our bigger concepts, so these videos are for object-oriented programming, which is a big thing. This is how we kind of dive into more computer science fundamentals. So you'll see that we have videos here as well. So the curriculum is definitely a combination of kind of text and written, and then you'll get live instruction from your mentor sessions and office hours and your team project meetings as well. So once you've worked through most of the curriculum, you'll have access to the Firehose job prep lessons. And so this is a big part of what definitely helps our students get jobs. I'd say this and then the experience from that Agile team project. So here we really break down what it's like to go after your first job as a developer. And so, a lot of what Ken was talking about is incorporated in this. But so we start all the way at the beginning of how to approach your job search and how to make sure that you're doing it really efficiently and effectively. So how to structure that, like a funnel, and really look at good options and where to find good options. And then once you've kind of gotten into that, we'll talk about what to expect, how to optimize your applications to really highlight the projects that you've worked on in your resume and your cover letter, and get in that kind of through the gatekeeper of the technical recruiter so that you can get a technical interview and really be able to, talk with the team there and demonstrate your skills. And so we talk about kind of soft skills as well. So like your developer brand, your online presence, and then what actually happens in a technical interview. And so I'll give you a preview of this just so that you can see kind of how in detail we go in here. And so you'll see things like, what to expect, optimizing your application. And so we're going really into detail of every step along the way to make sure that you're totally prepared and that you're ready to go out there and crush it with your applications. So this is a preview of our full program. So we'll go back to visiting with you now. So yeah, you can check out more of kind of what it's like to work through those lessons and everything in the free bootcamp prep course. And then definitely, as you have questions, let us know, and we're there to help you out, as I mentioned in the forum and all of that. So now that you've kind of seen what the platform looks like, going back to kind of what sets Firehose project apart and kind of what we really focus on and what our values are here. So I think kind of some of the main things that set us apart are the depth of our curriculum. So really focusing on computer science fundamentals and getting you that real world coding experience and the hands-on experience of creating apps on your own and going through that process both on your own as you're learning and then with the team. And so the Agile Team Project is another huge part of our program that helps students get jobs because it's allows you to go into those technical interviews and not only show the projects that you've worked on and the experience that you have, but be able to speak to working with a team, which, as you probably could tell from Ken speaking a little bit earlier, is a huge part of what really happens in the first few weeks and then for the rest of your career as a developer role. So you're going to be working with a team, having stand-ups every day, coordinating your pull requests and merging your code and all of that. So we want to make sure that you have that experience and know how to hit the ground running and show hiring managers that you're going to do that. So the team project is a huge part of our program. All the best products are definitely built by amazing teams. So we want you to be prepared to be a part of one of them. And so another thing that kind of definitely gets our students to that next level is the coordinated support. So as I was mentioning, the mentorship, the office hours, having the forum, and then our amazing Firehose community is a huge part of that as well. And so we definitely, always love hearing from our students and seeing what they're up to. We have students doing really amazing things after graduating. So definitely, if you want to see any examples of student applications or things that they've done after graduation or have questions about that, shoot us an email. We'd love to share that with you and talk a little bit further about your coding goals as well. Definitely feel free to send in any questions to the Firehose project. You can send it into questions@thefirehoseproject.com and we'll get back to you. Happy to answer any questions or chat about your thoughts at this point. And if you haven't already, please do sign up for the free bootcamp prep course, poke around in there, maybe write a few lines of code. send in your code for review. We'd love to see it. And hopefully we'll see you there. And thank you so much for joining us today. Look forward to answering any questions that you all have. See ya.